Good evening, grade 8 SPA Fileo and Francisco. This part here, we will have our video lesson in Science 8 for the third quarter for week 1 and 2. So for this time, we will be using the learning activity sheets or LAS. So here will be this is the first LAS or the LAS number 3.1. So it is entitled The Three States of Matter. And the learning competency here is after this lesson, you will be able to explain the properties of solids, liquids, and gases based on the particle nature of matter. So first, let us define matter. So matter takes up space and has mass. And everything around us is made up of matter. All solids, liquids, and gases in the universe are matter. This means that we can weigh matter. And when we use one kind of matter to make something such as a wooden or plastic chair, we say the material used was wood or plastic. So I guess this is not your first time to hear the word matter. And again, matter is anything that takes up space and has mass. And matter exists in three states. You have the solid, liquid, and gas. So as you can observe in this picture here, you can observe that the particles are very close with each other and they are very intact. While for liquids, medyo layo-layo na siya. There is already a space. And in gases, the particles are very far apart. So let's have first the properties of a solid. So solids have a definite shape, a definite volume. Particles are close together. There are strong attractive forces between particles and that's why they are very close with each other. Grabe ka close ang particles and they are very uh, compact sila. Then particles vibrate in all directions. And for liquid, they do not have a definite shape and they take the shape of its container. Like for example, sa atong water has no definite shape. It only takes the shape of its container. But it has a definite volume. The particles are also close with each other but not as much as solids. And there are weaker attractive forces between particles than in solids. Particles are free to move past neighboring particles. While gases, they do not have definite shape and definite volume. Particles are very far apart and have very weak attractive forces between particles. So kung weak ang sa liquids, mas grabe ka weak ang sa gases. Why? Because their particles are very far apart and the particles can move freely. So for your assessment in last number 3.1, there are 10 items and the instruction is tell whether each is a solid, liquid, or gas. And you have to write the complete word. And again, let me remind you, do not write anything in these activity sheets. I have provided you with an answer sheet, so you write your answers there. So number 1, we have milk. Number 2, cookie, oxygen, salt, helium, shampoo, pencil, wood, water, and carbon dioxide. The second activity will be about what is matter made of. So this is last 3.2. More than 2,000 years ago in Greece, a philosopher named Democritus suggested that matter is made up of tiny particles too small to be seen. And he thought that if you kept cutting a substance into smaller and smaller pieces, you would eventually come to the smallest possible particles, the building blocks of matter. Many years later, scientists came back to Democritus' idea and added to it. The theory they developed is called the particle model of matter. There are four main ideas in the particle model. First, all matter is made up of tiny particles. Second, these particles of matter are always moving. Third, the particles have spaces between them. And fourth, adding heat to matter makes the particles move faster. Solids, liquids, and gases are made up of tiny particles called atoms and molecules. An atom is the smallest particle of an element that has all properties of the element. A molecule is a particle consisting of two or more atoms combined together in a specific arrangement. It is an electrically neutral particle. So when you say neutral, it doesn't have a charge. It is neither positive nor negative. And it is the smallest particle of an element or compound that can exist independently. For example, a molecule of water consists of oxygen atom combined with two hydrogen atoms. Atoms of the same element can also combine to form a molecule. For example, oxygen in the air consists of oxygen molecules which are made up of two oxygen atoms. Okay, so let's have here first this diagram. So we have hydrogen, oxygen, and magnesium. So this is called atom. So one hydrogen atom, one oxygen atom, and one magnesium atom. If there are two atoms that were being combined chemically, then we can form a molecule. So we have here the molecule of water. So again, when you say water, it is not an atom, but it is a molecule. Why? Because it is composed of two or more atoms. So what are the atoms of what are the atoms that consist in a water molecule? We have hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms. So there are two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. So mostly we read it as H2O, and it is water. Okay, so identify the following. Write your answer in the space provided before the number. Number 1, it is formed when two or more atoms bond together. 2, he is the second philosopher who suggested that matter is made up of tiny particles too small to be seen. Number 3, tell whether the following is an atom or a molecule. So you just have to write the complete word for 1, 2, 5. Next will be last number 3.3. We have the physical properties of matter. Okay, so you can stretch a rubber band, but you can stretch a piece of string very much. You can bend a piece of wire, but you can't bend a matchstick easily. The rubber band and the wire change shape, but the substances that they are made of do not change. The ability to stretch or bend is a physical property. And a physical property is a feature or characteristic that describes an object or substance. Some examples of physical properties are color, shape, size, density, melting point, and boiling point. If you can describe the matter based on what it looks, feels, smells, or tastes like, you are describing the physical properties. And there are some examples of physical properties. So we have here the malleability. When you say malleability, it is the ability of a substance to be pounded into thin sheets. So like for example is this tin can. This tin can has the property of being malleable. Color. The color of the object can be seen and is a physical property of matter. Color can help identify a substance. For example, sulfur is usually yellow in color. Iodine is usually red in color. Next is odor. The smell or odor of an object gives off can also help identify a substance. Fourth, conductivity. The ability for heat and electricity to pass through an object easily. Metals are usually the best conductors of heat and electricity. Ductility is the ability to be drawn or pulled into a wire. So for example, the copper wire. Next is solubility. The ability to dissolve in another substance. Example, we have sugar dissolves in water. Magnetism, it is the attraction to a magnet. So usually metals they are the ones who is being attracted to a magnet. Texture, the visual and tactile quality of a surface. So it is either rough or smooth. Then mass is the amount of matter in an object or substance, while weight is the measure of the pull of gravity on object. while volume is the amount of space an object takes up. Density is the amount of matter in a given space or volume. Density is used to describe matter because everything has a different density. The melting point is the temperature at which a solid changes to a liquid. The boiling point is the temperature at which a liquid boils or changes to gas. Look for the answers in the word bank. Write the complete word of your answer. So we have 5 items there. Next is activity number 3.4. After physical properties, we will have the chemical properties of matter. All types of matter exhibit chemical properties. Chemical properties are the properties that describe matter's reactions with other substances. We can determine these chemical properties by seeing what happens to a substance when it displays the presence of the following: air, water, an acid, a base, and other chemicals. Chemical properties indicate how the composition of a substance will change when exposed to various other substances. So, pag na ay mag-change, that is considered as a chemical property. Okay. In figure 1, we can observe the difference in color between pure iron, which is lustrous dark gray color, and rusted iron, which is cinnamon colored. We can also observe the reaction that takes place when iron is heated by a flame, which the hot air reacts more rapidly with the pure iron. The changes that iron undergoes when exposed to air show us some of iron's chemical properties and help us to classify iron as a specific type of matter. Okay, which of the following would be examples of a chemical property? A, B, or C? So the answer is letter A. Most metals will react with acids. So for your activity, indicate whether each of the following is a chemical property or a physical property. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Diamonds are the hardest known substance. Salt is capable of dissolving in water. Vinegar reacts with baking soda. Most metals are lustrous, and most metals react with acids. And a given example of lead weighs 4.5 grams, and the length of a piece of aluminum foil is 12.2, let's say, centimeters. Okay, next we have 3.5. We have here the intensive and extensive properties of matter. Matter also exhibits physical properties. Physical properties are used to observe and describe matter. Physical properties can be observed or measured without changing the composition of matter. These are properties such as mass, weight, volume, and density. Intensive properties are the physical properties that do not depend on the amount of substance. So, di siya mag-depend sa amount of substance present. They are called intensive properties. Intensive properties do not change with changes of size, shape, or scale. Examples of intensive properties are as follows in the table. We have here color, taste, melting point, boiling point, density, luster, and hardness. So example, we have color. Aluminum metal is gray colored. Lemon juice citric acid is sour. Aluminum has a melting point of 660 degrees Celsius. Water has a boiling point of 100 degrees Celsius. Water has a density of 1 grams per ml. 1 gram per ml rather. Metals are lustrous, meaning they are shiny. Diamond is the hardest substance known. So, do not depend on the amount. So, for example, we have aluminum metal that is gray colored. Then, sa pagdaghan kaayo aluminum metal, it does not, it is still, it still consists of an intensive property compare sa mas gamay nga mga amount of aluminum metal. So, same lang yapon sila. They have their intensive property, which is their color. Extensive properties do depend on the amount of substance. We have examples, we have mass, volume, and length. So, When you say intensive, these are physical properties that do not depend on the amount of substance, while extensive properties are the physical properties that do depend on the amount of substance. So number 1 to 5, just write your answers on the answer sheet provided. Next, we have 3.6. So this part here, we will study the three states of matter per activity sheets. Per activity sheet rather. So we have here 3.6, the liquid state and its properties. So there are liquids all around you and you use them in your everyday life. So bisan sa atong everyday lives we can encounter this type of matter. For example, ang water nga atong ginainom, ang juice, ang daghan. So some examples are water, paraffin, baby oil, fruit juice, petrol, or Methylated spirits rather. What are the common properties of liquids? So in liquids, the particles are closer to one another, nudging one another as they move. And since the particles are closer to one another, the attraction between particles is stronger than those in gases. The particles move and change positions, but not as freely as those in gas. Liquids can flow out of a container and can be poured into another while maintaining their volume. This happens because there are attractions among the particles of liquid which hold them together although not in fixed positions. These attractions also make it possible for liquids to have a definite volume, and this is one major difference between liquids and gases. The particles are attracted to one another more strongly than the particles of gases are. So again, these are the examples of a liquid. You have milk and your juice, fruit juice. And liquids have no definite shape. It takes the shape of its container, but it has a definite volume. And the particles are close together. They have weaker attractive forces between particles than in solids, and particles are free to move past neighboring particles. Okay, so multiple choice. Choose the letter that corresponds to your answer. Write the letter in the space provided before the number. There are three items for the multiple choice. And 4 to 5, explain why liquids can flow out of a container. So the answer here is just found in your concept notes. Next, we will have 3.7. We have the gaseous state and its properties. Can you name any gases? What about the gas used in a stove to cook food? Have you seen the gas coming out of the exhaust of a motor car? In hospitals, there are cylinders filled with oxygen gas for patients with breathing problems. The air you breathe in has oxygen gas. The air you breathe out has more carbon dioxide gas. The particles in a gas are separated by much larger spaces than the particles in a liquid or a solid. Therefore, a gas is mostly empty space. It is all A gas always fills whatever container it is in, since the particles are moving constantly in all directions. They spread throughout their container, no matter what volume or shape their container is. So gases do not have a definite shape and volume. Then the particles are very far apart and they have very weak attractive forces between their particles and the particles can move freely. So 1, 2, 3, 4 items. There are three items for our multiple choice, and for numbers 4 to 5, explain why gases are mostly empty space. Next, we have 3.8. We have the solid state and its properties. Solids have definite shapes and volume because the particles are packed closely together in fixed positions. They vibrate a little but in these fixed positions. The particles cannot move around. The particles of solids are held together by strong forces. And one common characteristic of both solids and liquids is that the particles are in contact with their neighbors, that is, with other particles. Thus, they have incompressible and thus commonality between solids and liquids distinguishes them from gases. The particles in a solid are held together strongly. The spaces between the particles are very small, and it has a fixed shape and a fixed volume because the particles can move only a little. The particles vibrate back and forth but remain in their fixed positions. So these are the properties of a solid. They have definite shape and volume. Their particles are very close with each other. They have strong attractive forces between the particles, and particles vibrate in all directions. The example of a wood and a table. So there are 3 items for multiple choice, and 4 to 5 explain why solids have definite shapes and volume. Next is you have 3.9. So this is just a summary of your knowledge or for your learning for activities 3.1 to 3.8. So 3.9, we have the solid, liquids, and gas. Explain the properties of solids and liquids and gases based on the particle nature of matter. So we have here a table. Just complete the following table to describe the 3 states of matter. The table has been partially completed to help you. So in terms of shape, volume, spaces between the particles, and movement of particles, you answer the blank boxes. So this column here is for the solid, for the liquid, and for gases. Just base your answers here. Kita ra na diha tanan. Just read and understand. Lastly, we have 3.10. So for 3.10, we have the solid, liquid, and gas. And again, we have here the properties of solid, liquid, and gas, or the 3 states of matter. With this part, you just have to complete this table. Just write 10 examples of solids, liquids, and gases. That would be all for our video lesson for the third quarter, week 1 and 2. Again, do not hesitate to ask questions from me. Just send a message to me through Messenger. That would be all. Thank you.